meeting in order. First order of business is pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, first order of business tonight is to approve tonight's agenda. Have we got any additions? Get a motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. To approve the minutes of the February 18th council meeting. Everybody have a chance to read them? Any deletions, corrections? Get a motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. To approve the February 2025 claims list.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. To accept the disbursement of ledgers and financial statements for various funds for February 28, 2025.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. To approve the 2025 Minnesota Pay Equity Report. Have we got a chance to look at that? Or it's to approve the report.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. To accept the Ranier Rec Club donation of $4,000 again.
I'll make that motion. I'll accept. Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried with a big thank you. To accept the 2025 liquor store operating statement.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. To approve Appendix A of Ordinance 152, the water rates. Went through all of them. Everybody got them?
Yeah.
The motion.
I'll make it.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Lead and copper service. Caleb, haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, I know, it's been a little bit of most of the summer, but
Why don't you give us an update on this line inventory?
do you want me to use the mic or?
Yeah, come to the mic.
Clear line, Caleb Stramley with Woodseth out of our immediate office. This is Jeremy Schwarzy out of our tipping office. This is just kind of a lead behind our office here too, which is kind of an informational piece. So kind of some background about the program. You know, it was brought by the EPA last year. And then each city applied for funding, which Edith and Cheryl did. And then they got, full grant dollars, so, it didn't cost the city anything to do the preliminary inventory of all your services in town. And of that inventory, I think there was a total of 444 service lines in the city. And 329 were considered non-lead, 113 were considered unknown, and then one lead service line was identified, and then one galvanized, which the reason they include galvanized is because a lot of times galvanized used lead solder to make the fittings way back in the day. So it fell into that same category.
And how many unidentified?
113. So now how that's calculated, it could be like 60 on the city side and 53 on the private side. But if any part of that line is unidentified, the whole thing is. And part of that is just because maybe city records didn't show it. There wasn't a plan set that specifically showed the type of line in an area. So a lot of times what you'll see, and you can track all this on there's a link here for the University of Minnesota website. There's an interactive link. You can see exactly the houses. I think even it's that specific on there. You can look at each one. And it's going to be like specific neighborhoods as a whole because there wasn't a plan set or something like that. But kind of jumping to where we're at today, there's been a whole bunch of up in the air basically from the Department of Health on next steps. And what they've settled on is actually now a second round of this technical assistance, which is what we did in the first, back last summer and when we were going around doing the field inspections and all the letters and stuff like that. So there'll be a second round of that coming up just to try to attack those 113
Would
unknowns.
this physical may have to dig down and check those, an inspection to do an examination of them because, or are they unidentified because nobody went in the basement or checked at the meter? Or
That could be both, and then actually that leads into what they're thinking for a third round, which would be potholing the remaining and field actually verifying them, which they want to avoid that because they're thinking maybe it could be $5,000 per service to do something like that with restoration and everything, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of the next step of that. So Edith has applied for that. We have confirmation on that. So hopefully starting this spring into
So
summer.
your suggestion is that we make an application to identify the 130 or whatever the number is.
Yep.
And application to identify those and take corrective action if necessary.
Mhm.
Just for the identification portion, seek funding for the identification portion.
And yes, and Edith has applied for that funding. The deadline was supposed to be last Friday, but then they pushed it, or 2 Fridays ago, then they pushed it to this Friday because they just didn't give enough time. But she has already applied for that, so you guys will more than likely get that because you already got it the first round.
And do we let a bid letting out for that? You know, it's 130 by $5,000 a piece, you know.
Well, at this point, it's still just, it'll still just be us trying to identify the unknowns. And then the third part of that will actually be doing a project.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, but how about for the identifying, wouldn't that be a project that we have to let out on bids, or is that something we can do ourselves if the funding is available or something?
eventually, yeah. So I can get into that piece on how that funding would work
Well, it looks
too.
to me like you got 2 jobs. One just looking
Yeah.
to see what it is that, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 a pop,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that costs. You know, and that, if there's 100, that's a lot.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
It's $65,000 bill.
Especially if you get into replacement, you know, when you're ripping up streets and
Well, yeah,
stuff like
that's
that.
what I'm saying,
you know.
depending on where they are. Obviously, you try to make the inspection behind the curb or wherever, but again, so yeah.
So yeah, what they're recommending at this point as round 2 would be, the funding that would come in would basically be for us to do a rerun of last year, try to do more inspections for houses that either didn't get hit or were we were unable to get into, stuff like that, and try to get more of those. And then we can apply for the lead and galvanized ones at this point for just replacement.
There's only a couple of them, so.
Yeah, but there's only one a piece. So that's kind of up to the,
Wouldn't it make sense to do the inspection first and then apply for the whatever number that you
yeah,
need?
that would be my recommendation, is to kind of wait, because then you can maybe try to piggyback a project as a part of this too. You know, if we're looking at different areas of town and there's bad water main or something like that too, there might be a cheaper way to get water main if there's already going to be funding. But that's kind of getting ahead of everything. But how the funding would work is it'd be like 100% grant funding to the resident, just 100%. And then for the city side of it, if there was the city side, which would be the main to the curb stop piece of the line, would have to be replaced. It'd be on a reimbursement basis. The city would have to bond it and then get a full reimbursement. Basically, once it's closed up, it's still 100% grant, but you just have to bond it a little bit, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at now. And yeah, I don't know exactly if they're going to have us do the letters again, or just try to do more inspections for this, or just, I went through, I think, all the plans we could find, but we might look and see if there's still more old plans to look
Just a
through.
little bit in the dark here. We can apply for funding to, which is fully reimbursable, to identify the services, but your firm would go around and try to identify some, but the ones that weren't identifiable, you know, because you couldn't tell what they are inside, then would you hire the potholing done, or is that something, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
someone's going to get paid for it. but
Correct.
Is it then if we apply for the funding, we hire you to do the inspection of all you can without the digging, but if we have to pothole some, either hydrovac or actually open cut, then do we go through you, or do you monitor? Well, you monitor it just so you got documentation, but and then would you hire that contractor, or is that something we would do?
So, that's going to be the third round, which that'll all be coming out like this fall for information on that. But from how they've been doing this, because we're being contracted directly with the Department of Health, and the Department of Health doesn't send the city money, my guess would be that the Department of Health would contract directly with a contractor, and the city would
do
not.
The ones that you
correct, to do the
physically-
potholing.
You can look and see, but then somebody could have a contract with whoever it is, and we can give some recommendations on the contractor and.
Correct.
And, okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
why I want to be clear, because obviously you can go look in the basement and see what it is, but if somebody has to do some digging,
Yeah.
I know what the bill's going to be paid, but who's doing the contracting, and if it's the Department of Health or WSN or the city, I just want the clarification on that, because the grant's going to come and it'll be reimbursable, but who basically administrates the grant and who does the hiring, that's all.
Correct. And that'll be what we'll really look at kind of next November. This piece, it'll just be the Department of Health contracting with us again. And then whatever we can't get, basically we'll apply to do it all and treat everything as lead. I mean, that's what they want you to do. The unknowns at that point to be treated as
And
potential
then you
lead
can
to do investigation.
The way I see how that could work, then you could say, okay, we had identified 50 of the 130. There's 80 undetermined. We have to, and this would be the conversation you have with the department or what you're writing. Writing up a grant where we need funds to hire a contractor, and whether we take it out on bids or negotiate with a contractor to go and do the inspection on the remaining 80. And
Yep.
whether it passes through you, probably should pass through you anyway, because then you got the documentation of what's actually there, at 3501 Spruce Street. There's where they are, and then you identify them for replacement. So you have the record of where they are. So, yeah, okay. Well, that's fine. I'm following the process here now. So.
Yes, and that's kind of where it's going. I think their goal is within 10 years, so 2034 or 35, they want to have no lead left in the United States, which is a good thing. But I think out of all the services identified nationwide, over 25% of them or something like that were unknown.
Yeah, we did the one for International Falls. We were a little bit, but they didn't award it.
Yeah, I think they're holding off on the money, I think.
Yeah, we gave them a bid, and they accepted the bid, but they didn't award the contract, so the lead lines are still there.
To do replacement of them? To do full replacement, you guys?
Yeah, but they decided not to do it. They went right in the basement and replaced it, right to the meter and fixed the basement, the hole in the basement, and that was part of the process.
Sure.
It didn't happen, so.
So yeah, I think once they get all that figured out, hopefully the money will start getting pushed out, but I think that
Well,
kind
we're
of
going to
the
apply
wrap
for the
on
funding of it, and then we'll just have to keep you, I understand the process now with 1, 2, 3, so once we receive the funding, then we'll either contact you or see how we can administrate it, and then go from there, because we do want to get them identified to follow this program. Obviously, there's some things that just happened to walk in, and funding from the EPA was drastically cut. So we don't know if these programs are still going to exist.
Correct.
Next year or this year. So how they're funded or whether the funds are going to be available, yes, no, maybe so.
I think the Department of Health had $280 million that, is still allocated that, but across the whole state, $280 million doesn't go very far. I mean, when you start looking at the cities.
280 million just statewide.
I think it's statewide, but I mean, you look at Minneapolis, and I think they had, I don't remember how many it was, and then that are actually identified
Was
as
that just
lead.
statewide?
Statewide, the 280 million.
million statewide? Boy, yeah.
But that includes all the planning and all of the investigative and everything. So I mean,
How many people in Minnesota? How many households?
Right, I mean, it's-
residents, so should be enough to go around. If again, it stays intact. So, okay. I got her, I got our list. We'll just have to wait and see how the grant comes through, and we'll apply for it, and then we'll just stay in contact with you. Is there anything, you got all the paperwork necessary to apply, otherwise you can ask them?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Caleb's been great to work with.
Well, yeah, work through it, whatever we
Yeah.
have to fill.
Thanks for the update.
Yeah, and then as far as us, I don't know if you want to set more meetings, you know, we're more than willing to do that, you know, this summer to do updates throughout, if that's
Well,
something you...
I think what we have to do is, obviously, I understand the process now. Once we get the grant, then I think it'd be necessary to have a meeting, because then we'll need a schedule. You know, obviously,
Sure.
there's 130 residents here we're going to check out, or businesses, so someone's going to be crawling around in their basements or digging holes or whatever to
Right.
get that inspection. And once we get them documented, then the actual construction part, which right now there's only a couple of them, but it could be up to 132, you know?
Yeah.
So then the project would be left in, you know, all the steps to move forth on that. So I think we're fine with the council. I totally understand what's going on, and once the grant comes in, it's, you know, we can have some communication, but I don't think it's necessary that you have to come up here and explain anything
Okay.
to us. If somebody wants to ask any questions, I gotta figure it out. I think the council does too now. So we're still in the inspection process. We're applying for grants to figure out, I'm just recapping, to figure out the unknown ones. The 130 is the second step to
Yep.
identify them all.
Exactly.
Once we get the identification, then we'll do a construction project. Even if it's two, we're gonna have it done, but we might be able to just negotiate a small one like that, so. Okay.
And then just real quick, I'd like to introduce Jeremy a little bit more. Jeremy's a civil engineer. He's been working kind of all around the range and everything for his career, both on the municipal side, and does a lot of site plans for building developments and stuff like that. So he's definitely a good resource if we have other things that come up past this too, that we can, if we want to look at other projects
we'll
at some
take all the
point.
advice
So,
we can get.
right?
I'm here to, assist Caleb. I have 12 years of engineering experience. I've worked with a lot of communities before. And,
Where are you from?
I live in Hibbing.
Hibbing, okay.
So, but yeah, so going to some meetings with Caleb and getting to know communities and stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, for some reason you can't get a hold of Caleb, give me a call. I'll pass out my business card if anybody wants to,
Yeah, right. It's nice to have a source whether you know, I know Caleb, but that's fine if you're hitting, that's closer, and
Yeah.
we can get through it. If we have any other questions or something that shows up in between, obviously, might be some of that. I don't know, Nick reads the meters too. A lot of that can be identified when he's reading, but most of ours is outside meter reading now. So, you know, again, you eliminate one problem, and then the flip side of it is we could take a look in the basement and tell what we had, and now say,
Right.
got it.
Well, thank you very much. We'll
Thanks, Caleb.
stick around for a few more minutes in case any other questions come up.
To approve the Voyager Country ATV grant support letter, I think we get a,
I'll make a motion on this.
got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Jeff, to approve the dark sky proclamation. I have it here. I could read it in the entirety, but I think I'll just let you do a little talking.
Thank you for placing this on the agenda. Simply put, a proclamation is an announcement about something important. In this case, the importance of our dark sky. Important in a number of ways. It is something we take for granted, but it's awe-inspiring to go outside and see the Milky Way and to be able to see the Northern Lights. 4/5 of our country has never seen the Milky Way because there's so much light pollution. We have this dark sky oasis here, actually the best Northern Lights viewing in the lower 48 states. And the word has gotten out, and this has become a source of astrotourism. It's a new thing. Bring tourists in the winter. I once met a woman from Puerto Rico who was staying at the Cantilever and taking a taxi out to a stargazing event out at the at the Bogwalk. Eric Johnson is taking people on Voyagers Outfitters to the Bog Walk for a walking night sky tour. He had 150 plus people from out of state come here, so it's a growing thing. But beyond the benefit to being able to gaze at stars, it's good for the economy to use best lighting practices because you're not wasting electricity. It's good for our health. It's being a good neighbor so that we're not shining lights in people's eyes. So there's a lot of reasons to protect the dark sky. And the letter that you received from Voyageurs Conservancy has to do with the fact that we are a designated dark sky location from International Dark Sky. This designation can bring a lot of economic benefit and tourism to an area, and it's also something that can be lost because there's a roughly 10% increase in light pollution every year, and if we don't get in front of it, they measure the park every year, and you can lose the designation, and that would be a bad thing. So it's a fairly simple thing, just to say it's Dark Sky Week for the various whereases, and I've summarized many of them. It doesn't commit you to anything. It's not an ordinance. It's not a resolution, although those would be nice someday.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think, as you know, we, with this railroad improvement coming up with we did bring that subject up. That was and it was well received by the railroad with
Yes.
down lighting and minimal lighting in their parking lot.
Yes.
We probably reduced what we have now, but I haven't seen their final plans, but we
Yeah.
did address it, and it was
Yes.
a big concern, and we're going to keep following that up. And same with our pier project that we just advertised for bids. We made sure there was down lighting, and I can't speak for the
That's great. Yeah.
steering committee, but I know it was addressed that we wanted just low ambient lighting, and we didn't want spotlights on there.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful to hear that.
And what you're saying is true. I just go 17 miles north to my island, and there is a sizable difference. When you get just north, just the illumination from the little town here, or mainly from when you get up there, the skies are really something else. I mean, you can see the clarity of the stars.
It's crazy to me that when you go out to look at the Northern Lights and you think you can drive to the Park Service to do that, they have all those parking lot lights lit up. You can't even see the Northern Lights at the park Rainy Lake.
Visitor Center?
They
At
have
the visitor
just
center.
they keep their. I'm sure for safety reasons, but it's crazy to me that they have those lights there. So actually, if you want to see the Northern Lights as a person driving from, say, where I'm living here in Ranier, or from International Falls, Tilson is the best place to see it.
Yeah.
Not at the park building, which you'd think you could
Yeah.
park there, and in the winter it's different. You can go out on the ice
Right.
road, and that's a different experience too. But the big lighting, if we could get rid of all the lighting, like street lighting, I love that.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't like that idea. But it's crazy that they don't have specialty lighting out there. At least the last 2 years I went, they didn't.
They should. Their lights are red.
They're orangey, but you
Yeah.
still can't see.
Oh.
It's
Does the light come through the windows of the center? Is that
No,
what's
it's just
illuminating?
the parking lot lights, like where the docks, the
Yeah.
launch
It's a
is.
glow over the whole parking lot.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a lot of light pollution. I don't go there to look at the Northern Lights anymore. I go straight to Tilson because the lights.
That's a better idea.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that because I value that. We have 2 huge bright lights that shine off the side of this building, and I always say we need to get rid of that.
I will-
The brightest lights in the community, they come off this community.
I will pass that along. No, that's a,
Yeah, I mean, the big
That's an
proponent
oversight.
here is the national park, and I accept their views and everything, but yet again, they missed one of their own, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that too, because Voyager Outfitters had built, they bought those 2 islands just before, the last 2 islands before going into the Rural Narrow, and they actually constructed a geodesic dome with big lights on them, not big lights, big windows, and they winterized it. It's good for 40 below, and they went through the whole winter without anybody there just to check to make sure it was. But they got the beautiful pictures of all the, you know, the northern lights and
Yeah.
everything else. You can't believe how much feedback we got on that. You know, like, oh, when can I rent it? When can I do this? So next year, that property will probably be up for rent. You know, that's what,
Yeah.
they were going to construct
Yeah.
basically six of them
Yes.
on those two islands. But the feedback was, I mean, monstrous. People, oh boy, can I
Yeah.
do that, you know? Especially, you know, rented for winter camping.
Yes.
It's a glamp, it's a five-star place,
Yeah.
but it's what you're looking at, so I know what you're talking about, because I know the response they got from once they just ran a little bit of on their website about it, poof, it was inundated with calls. So, you're right.
If you talk to any of the waitresses out at the lake resorts, restaurants, they'll say,
Not me.
hmm?
My wife won't let me.
They say that they run into all kinds of astrotourists. They're here.
Well, here too at Cantilever, you'll be sitting in there and somebody will, when can we go look at these lights? And,
Yeah.
you know, we do have, you know, like you said, we take it for advantage.
We have,
got
yeah.
dark skies here, and everybody's seen northern lights, but it's unbelievable when I go to Hawaii or something, ask them, well, you ever see them? Oh, yeah. You want to see some pictures? I can pull up, you know, half a dozen pictures on my phone. This is last week or something we show them. And
That's
it's
amazing.
gorgeous pictures. You know, oh, boy. So we
Yeah.
do take it for advantage. So, yeah, we're 100%. So this proclamation, I don't have to read it, but we'll read the last sentence of this here, or the last paragraph. I, Dennis Wagner, Mayor of Ranier, Minnesota, USA, today hereby declares April 21st through 28th, 2025 as International Dark Sky Week in Ranier, Minnesota. We get
I'll make a
on that?
motion to approve that.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Check out that parking lot.
But by the way, we've asked Mayor Dill, Mayor Hallekas from
Fort Francis.
from Fort Francis. We've got a message through to the tribal council, 7 chiefs of First Nations on the other side. And if everyone made this declaration, that would send a very powerful message about the importance
Well,
of
we
our
get
dark
the
sky.
reservations to help too, that always helps, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see, but you're the first, so thank you very much.
You got it. Okay, where are we, to approve memorandum of agreement for implementing Rainy Lake, Rainy River Watershed Management Plan.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so carried. To approve ordinance number 168 to regulate cannabis business and cannabis use. You know, we're trying to get that all under our county rules and regulations, and I see there's stuff on the news again about it tonight, and it's coming along. The legislator is now, what I just caught on the news before I come in here was that the state legislation is approving all the rules and regulations for the use of it. So apparently they've hashed them out. Now they're going to have a vote on it. So probably as early as, well, they're voting on it. So you know, whenever the vote is tallied, I guess we'll hear about that. And then of course then the county will jump in and see how it affects us. So, well, I think that was just, okay, we need, if we'll approve the ordinance, yeah, we'll need a motion. All in favor? Or excuse me,
I'll make that motion.
second. I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. To approve summary of the ordinance number 168 for publication. Again, same ordinance, but we're going to publicize it. So get a motion to publicize it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. To repeal ordinance 162 regulating CBD products.
I'll make that. I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, so that gives us the open forum. Is there anybody with anything they'd like to say? Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.